Hello, happy December. My name is John Carroll. I'm the CEO and founder of the Service Council. Welcome to today's inService podcast event. I am beyond words thrilled to be joined by my friend and colleague, someone that has been an ambassador for service for a long time, an ambassador of her organization, Aquant. She's the director at Aquant. Her name is Tas Hirani, and she's been a consistent source of validation, invalidation, and signals that she's getting directly from the marketplace. I've come to really respect her opinion on all things related to service. Tas, welcome to today's discussion. I'm so pleased to have you join me.
Thank you, John, for that amazing intro. Really, really lovely.
Outstanding. And Tas, we have something special for today's guest. I'm going to pop it up here, but I'll allow you to introduce this.
Yeah, sure. So everybody loves a New York bestseller book. Well, that's what you've got right here. So you're going to see a link coming in the chat. If you fill the details in, you would be in with an opportunity to claim this book for free. So just click in the form, fill in your details, and yeah, just wait for it to come.
Outstanding. I love it. Thank you to Aquant and the team here for giving that gift. Tis the season, as they say. So I love allowing the Oprah Winfrey moment here to everybody gets a book. So that's great. I too want that book. I've never seen it, and I'd love to have a copy of it. Well, let's get into today's discussion. So turning 2026 AI predictions into results at scale. You know, before we jump into our interactive Q&A, I just kind of want to riff for like 2 minutes. I'll try and go through quickly. I am a little long in the tooth, so Tas, just throw tomatoes at the screen if I go too long. So there's a larger set of service leader signals and trends that my colleague Gerardo and I will be framing out over the next quarter and more near term towards the end of the year. But as we look at sort of, some of the things that we've been building upon, last year's symposium theme was harnessing technology and humanity. The operative word was "and," right? This concept that these two things need to work in harmony, that it's not digital first only, it's digital first and human first. And we just framed out our symposium theme for next year, this concept of establishing symbiosis within your business and looking at, how can human and machines not just be integrated, but co-evolving together, where, machines can be used for some of the more mundane, whether it be procedural or diagnostic or routing, and humans can be leveraged for those high touch moments, those personalized moments for exception handling, for human to human interpersonal collaboration with the customer, for maybe even representation of commercial opportunity, right? That continuous relationship building opportunity. We all heard the quote from one of our keynotes at last year's symposium, Elizabeth Dixon from Chick-fil-A: automate the transactional and elevate the relational, right? And I think that speaks really well into that theme. One of the things that I'm around the topic of AI, so not just service leader or macro trend, but now getting into technology, which is tippity top amongst the top signals that we're getting in terms of trend and service leader priority is certainly AI. But we're hearing a little bit more and more of a return of journey mapping, making a comeback. There's all sorts of opportunities for AI to drive, customer orchestration. There's all sorts of opportunities to subordinate the service experience where mundane tasks can be utilized by AI agents and can be automated in many respects. So that's one thing that we're hearing. The second thing I would say, there's the traditional silos of service. You've got field, you've got remote, you've got digital. They're collapsing, right? And we're getting out to a point where we're going to see universal agent models that are emerging that are backed by AI co-pilots and then supplemented by the human experience where and when needed, right? And so we're hearing a lot more about that. We're hearing more about service events being blended, right? So this whole concept of from triage all the way through to remote resolution to field dispatch to post-event, follow-up activities. This opportunity to blend that experience into one collapsed experience. And I think that's important because customers view service as one journey, right? And they want to achieve this this personalization pathway in their experience. The third signal that I'm getting from a service leader macro perspective is this concept of platform consolidation, where redundant point solutions are being retired in lieu of, the single throat to choke. I hate that word, but in that phrase, but it's the best way to say it. But we're also looking to unify data and workflows and to build platforms, future platforms that are future ready and that are built for scale, that are AI enabled, they're AI native. So we're hearing a lot more of this, and it's funny. The Gartner just came out with their top tech investments in CRM, 61% year-over-year growth in terms of technology investment in CRM platforms. It's not that people don't have CRM currently; it's that they weren't built for scale. They were not AI native. They weren't AI ready, right? And so it's no shock that these continued investments and consolidation efforts will happen. Now, getting into AI a little bit more specific, we're hearing a lot more of where AI is making an impact from back office to frontline customer facing. We're hearing a lot more about the stack, the 5 layers of AI, data layer, model layer, orchestration, application, observability layer. Where is the source of that partner that can do all of the above? Is it one? Is it more than one? And so we're hearing a lot more of service leaders looking at orchestration of partnership and how do we get, collaboration amongst these boutique players that are fitting into those different layers of the AI stack, right? And so that's a big part of it. And then lastly, to complete the swing before I welcome back Tas, is this concept of effective change management and, how it takes a very careful approach and how, cross-functional collaboration isn't just, the only thing, but you have to look at, decisions around brownfield versus greenfield. We're hearing more and more about organizations that are trying to create and build native organizations that from scratch that are just AI and then the other side of it is the brownfield environment where they're evolving and change managing and getting to a point where they're becoming AI native over a period of time. So all these things are critical decisions. They're critical to the success of AI. And we're going to dive in. Tas is a leading expert on these topics. She has, the ear right to the customer, is constantly talking with Aquant's customers, which are worldwide leading brands across the globe. And Tas, I'm so excited to welcome you back. And before we kick off, I think you had a question for me. So I want to turn it over to you to pop a question over to me.
I do, John. I mean, let's be frank, you've done quite a lot of these, and there's this killer question that I do recall that you asked me one time, and it stuck with me for a real long time. So I'm going to flip this right back to you. Please, John, share with us something that's not on your LinkedIn profile that people will not know about you.
Oh, gosh, that's a good one. All right, I'm going to give 3, okay? I'm a Boston Marathon finisher. I ran it, the year was 2018. It was a tough year, lots of rain and water on the course. It was snowy, icy, and quite brutal. I finished. It was, wow, crazy. Had to walk 5 miles in the middle, got hypothermia, and had to run through the pain at the end. My gosh, that was an experience. But sub 5 hours, I was proud of it, 4:33, and that's one thing. Second thing, I have 4 wonderful kids. You'll look on my LinkedIn profile, father first is always my leading message. I love them dearly. They are my life, my heart, and they're all special, but one of them is extra special, Henry. He's on the autism spectrum, and a very special relationship for me. And then lastly, going even further back, I raced motocross professionally as a young man. Dirt bikes in the dirt, crazy, right? And back in 1994, when I was a small young man, I won the New England Championship. So that's one of my crowning achievements in my athletic career. So those are 3 quick things about me.
Very cool. Love it, John.
Awesome. Well, let's get back to our on topic here today. Thank you for flipping that, by the way, Tas. I love learning about personal things on our guests, and also happy to share some things about me. But let's get into kicking us off here with predictions. Prediction episodes can sometimes be quite lofty, right? Why is it important to ground 2026 AI predictions in practical how-to guidance for service leaders? Maybe we can start there.
Yeah, I think let's be frank and honest. I don't have a crystal ball here on my desk. I'm not attempting to do any of that weird and wonderful because this is not a party trick. The audience, and if you're a service leader, you're a servicer, you work for a manufacturer, what you really want to know is lessons learned and what can we do better. And I think when we think about 2026 predictions, I think that's what we're going to be grounded on. We're going to be really grounded on the fact that both John and I have the amazing benefit of asking many service leaders across many industries what's top of mind for you. And we partner with many customers who have been successful and who have been less than successful, unfortunately. And they're candid enough to share with us some real insights into the things that they could have done better and what they're looking to do differently. And that's what we're going to really dive into in these 2026 predictions.
Outstanding. I love it. Let's get into an area that I think is really important, and that is, defining success, right? You've spoken a lot about ROI, and then this other concept of outcomes and return on experience, as some others are framing it. How should service leaders balance the pressure to deliver financial ROI with their instinct to prioritize people and employee experiences? What are some of the things you're hearing?
I think when I'm listening to service leaders, they really think about their people. They think about, how can I retain talent? How can I improve the employee experience? How can I address some of the friction that's leading to slower onboarding? And when you're looking at investing in a technology, your CFO is not really interested in your eNPS score. While that's a great metric for your head of people or the executive that cares about that sort of thing, your CFO doesn't really get that. So when you're thinking about what these service leaders are up against, breaking it down really practically, if you think about a specific use case where maybe you're really going to get tighter on parts identification and guided fault finding, well, that's going to, hopefully using an AI, increase the accuracy, increasing the technical ability. That's going to really have an impact on increasing the first time fix rate and therefore reduce your repeat visits. So if you're following my logic with that specific use case, the ROE, which enables your employees to feel good about getting it right first time with better accuracy, improving their technical ability, then translates into something that your CFO can understand, which is an ROI. Because then you've got a simple mathematical calculation for him, which is number of repeat visits multiplied by cost of each visit. And then thinking about additionally, maybe kind of the reduction of parts. And there you go. You've got your ROI, which ties directly back to your ROE.
Love it. I love it. It makes a lot of sense. It makes perfect sense. I do think that to supplement your talking points, I think there are still even opportunities to look at some of those eNPS and churn and defection and link it back. There's connective tissue between metrics in terms of, okay, what is retention in terms of lowering, cost to acquire a customer, in terms of, what is the meaning of customer lifetime value to our organization? And there's a broader story as the service leaders elevate to that boardroom environment, connecting creating that tissue that connects some of those, customer metrics to revenue metrics become quite critical. And the cost savings is one element. But how this extends into, all these other aspects is also quite critical to the story.
Yeah.
Let's get into something else here, and that is, there's a quiet killer of AI projects. You mentioned, this collaboration, right? This cross-functional collaboration and, alignment across IT and security and operations and service leadership, is a great big determinant of success. And what are you seeing in terms of the importance of strong stakeholder alignment, and what does it look like in practice? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, 100%. Look, many people have talked to me quite candidly about the fact that it's a tricky situation for the business to dictate the technology strategy, because that's the domain of IT. And so having a lockstep relationship with the stakeholder who's responsible for the technology agenda when you're looking to explore solutions in the world of service is something that becomes challenging at best. And really, when you're thinking about the alignment from the executive level, that's where I was talking about your people officer is going to be very, very interested in those metrics like ENPS. Your CFO just wants tangible numbers that are going to hit the bottom line. Your IT stakeholder, to what you mentioned before, he's looking for, well, can I leverage something that we're using already? What's this going to mean in terms of additional impacts on our data privacy, and where's our data going to be going? And that's why we're seeing so much technology simplification and people really thinking about adding more to the stack. And so it's really becoming more challenging for the service agenda to actually come to fruition when you're actually carrying the hopes and desires of your CFO, which wants your bottom line people to be more efficient, your CFO that wants those bottom line savings, your people leader to have that greater retention and more satisfaction. How do you get alignment around this, John? That was a real question that you asked me. Listen and actually think about how you're communicating with these different stakeholders, and your agenda needs to have something in it for them, and you need to think about it that way.
100%. I totally agree. Listening and communication are so critical. Setting realistic expectations. As a service leader, as an executive leader, if you're trying to instill or implement a new solution, you've got to be there for the takedown and the teardown just as much as you are for the build, right? You can't, be half in on this thing. And you mentioned the point of listening. Listening also includes two important stakeholders: the front line and the customer. And those are two things that we often hear or point to as overlooked inputs in terms of the why. What are we solving for? So I love those points you make there, Tas. And one of the things that you and I talked about when we were planning this thing was navigating internal politics, right? So cross-functional collaboration, important, all that stuff. But you talked about data privacy and tech consolidation debates and experimental AI for free pitches and how that's a real battlefield. And what practical strategies have you seen service leaders use to navigate what might often feel like scar tissue inside organizations in terms of, we've all heard the MIT study, 95% of AI projects fail. How do you get rid of that scar tissue? How do you overcome some of the common myths and things that are coming about with respect to AI?
Yeah, and I've seen, this is where I've really listened in hard, actually, and really tried to understand how people have navigated this situation. And honestly, it's going back to very simple techniques of really just a good old-fashioned RACI metrics, or really understanding the responsibilities, ensuring you've got super clear alignment around expectations. Because the expectations of those different stakeholders, they're looking for different success metrics. And so you need to be really set up right up front with incredibly clear expectations and alignment around the elements that different people are responsible for and when those are going to be realized. In terms of what you mentioned around these different types of technologies and how quick you can experiment with and the amount of resource that takes and who that's taking it from. In terms of kind of practical strategies, you need to think about, if you're going to allow that experiment to happen, to your point, what impact is that having on CX and the user? Are you taking them away from their day job, and what impact is that going to have on the customer experience? Are you going to continue to meet those SLAs and KPIs? Because each one of these situations is a trade-off, let's be honest, John. And when it comes to politics, it's really around just remove ambiguity, super clear, Make it easy for everybody to understand where they need to be and what's going to be delivered when.
I love it. I love it. And one of the things we talked about was how change management is a continuum, right? It's not there's not a project end date. It is a continuous improvement effort. And I know you believe in that and the theory of starting small and getting early wins and building upon that. What are 3 change management behaviors you could share with our listenership that you think are real success criteria to change management? We've talked about a couple things already, maybe a double click on some of those things, or maybe you have something else behind that.
Yeah, there's a few of our customers that have been really successful in applying ADKAR, which if people are not familiar with that acronym, just a Google search will reveal it's a strategy that enables you to really think about introducing a technology and thinking about the people who are going to be involved in the adoption of that technology and helping them embrace that. It really covers all of the elements in terms of who somebody needs to hear from, in terms of your communication strategy, the different elements that people go through, and a little bit of the neuroscience for those of you that like the science element. It really helps underline the trigger for the actual user of the new technology, what's going to trigger them to adopt, and help them to kind of get over that hurdle. So that's kind of number 1, I would say. Number 2, if I was giving a practical strategy that I've seen people use, is really around when you're introducing technology, it's also about not forgetting to have some fun. And people might think, what on earth are you talking about, Tas? Right, so let me double click on this. I think one of the customers that I think really nailed this was they actually introduced a completely gamified version, which had nothing to do with the underlying product, which almost created almost like a treasure hunt search within the new technology that allowed everybody to engage with the platform on an equal footing, regardless if you've been at the company for 2 weeks or for 25 years. Everybody had a go to kind of follow this quest to actually engage with the platform. Creates a bit of fun. There were some prizes, and it's about not taking it too seriously, but helping people overcome the fear of failure by doing it in the real world. This is why cars have crash test dummies, and so have some fun with your crash test dummies. Kind of number 2. And number 3, there's always going to be someone who just isn't going to feel comfortable with using the technology. And it's really about the third and final piece for me is really around finding a way to leverage what's in it for that person. If it's someone who's been at the company for a really long period of time and they value their expertise and intelligence, how are you going to reward them for sharing that? Or if it's somebody who just doesn't like using that in the job, maybe it's about showing them with the data in your system, perhaps in a one-on-one, on how others who are using that technology, their actual performance versus yours, and to see the differential that they can make in actually using it. So I hope that gave you 3 kind of different flavors of real practical strategies around change.
I love it. I love it. Great ones. I would also say for our listenership, right? Tech adoption, it used to be that tech adoption struggled because of resistance to some new flavor of the month, whether it be a feature that was added into an existing tech platform or a new technology. People were averse to it. And then AI became this big, hairy beast that was going to steal my job. And all of a sudden there became this adversarial relationship. I don't think it's any longer resistance to change. I think it's lack of preparation and preparedness of the organization to change, right? That the training doesn't align with the real life practical scenarios where the technology is going to be used. And so the team is out there utilizing some new technology, and the change management effort was cascading in terms of what was required to get the team prepared to make those changes and to embrace those changes. So I think that's another element of it, is making sure that training aligns with real life and practicality. So that would be another point that I would make.
Yeah.
Let's get into the other one here that's pretty big, and this is right harnessing not only the knowledge but the procedural guides that longer tenured service technicians that are moving towards retirement before they do. How do we harness that? So you highlighted the opportunity and urgency of capturing the expertise of seasoned employees before, and what are you seeing as the best ways to tap into that knowledge as part of an AI strategy? Maybe you can share a couple of examples.
Yeah, I really love this one because so many situations I've been in, it's such a concern. People have called it the silver tsunami. It's had many weird and wonderful names. But essentially, there are so many things that I'm seeing in terms of fear of this kind of knowledge leaving. And there are some really great strategies out there that I think a lot of companies can really take forward in 2026. I think it's about helping to understand for these specific users how they can very easily capture some of this knowledge. In some companies, we see that these people who have this amazing knowledge quite often go into sometimes almost like a third line or a phone a friend. So they become like a desk-based kind of user. And one of the things that I've seen really leverage that experience is recording those calls for those specific tricky fixes and then converting that into knowledge that's actually pushed into the AI system. And using that to kind of plug the gaps in some of the base data set of knowledge manuals and operating procedures, because these guys are like, the boiler whisperers. They hear a certain noise or somebody's describing to them a certain vibration or whatever it is. And, those are things that you can actually, through capturing them describing it, convert into golden nuggets, which are just amazing for you to retain in your system. And the other way that I've seen companies really leverage this is giving those experts almost like a leaderboard. So rewarding them and actually really highlighting the experts and how many contributions they're making into any kind of system that you have. And I think one of the reasons why I've seen this is I've seen a very traditional manufacturer actually employ this, where they had a huge pool of very, very seasoned professionals. And they actually, for that specific group, created an expert leaderboard. And it really, it kind of not just the kudos of sharing their what they felt was like their intellectual property gained from being in the company for 20 plus years. It was very difficult for some of them to actually give that up. So they needed to see others doing it in order to make them feel comfortable to do the same. And that approach, simple, but it works.
Love it. Love it. A couple of great points you make in there. Gamification. I love that. Celebrating it, making it fun. And that was echoed by one of our listening audience members, Eric, here, on immortalizing those tenured employees that are bringing knowledge into the enterprise as a standard operating procedure. That's a celebratory moment. I think that's something that could create career satisfaction and reward and recognize that employee as they're achieving that moment of retirement and contributing to future generations. So I love that point you make there, Eric. And if our listening audience, if you have additional thoughts, comments, reactions, or questions even, please feel free to comment. We'll try to fit it in. We're going to go long. I knew this was going to happen because when I get Tas on a call, I just want to tap her expertise as long as I can. So we're going to go probably about 10 or 15 minutes over our 30-minute mark here. So let's get into, early successes. I'm going to skip over one of our planned questions because I think we covered it. Let's get into what's working now, because there's a lot of fear. I mentioned the MIT study. And Gartner has similar statistics on failed implementations, where those implementations are, making the biggest success. And just as a quick set of highlights, MIT shared that 95% of AI projects fail, that don't achieve scale. and that where it was making the biggest impact was more back office functions and not front of the line in terms of customer facing. So those were kind of like very high level, some of the points that were brought out of that exercise and that research. So when you're talking to customers, Tas, what common traits do you see among them that are realizing early success with AI? What are like those common extracted sort of approaches that you see are, wow, that's a model for success?
Yeah, I would say I really thought about this actually, and one of the things that I would say is that there is a realization at some point in the exploration around service that you're not just deploying a bot, you're deploying your brand at scale. Because when you're thinking about service and the exposure that those people in your service frontline have, that is incredibly important, that you just don't forget that technology isn't one of the things that detracts you from realizing that the goal of service is about exceptional customer experiences. And a lot of your frontline is interacting with customers at a moment where they are less than happy.
Yep.
And when you understand that, and the real service leaders who really understand that, they then treat an AI deployment with the respect that it deserves. And when I say the respect that it deserves, they're thinking about that alignment in their leadership team and understanding what are the different elements each of those leaders need. And they're thinking about how they're going to satisfy what is needed operationally, financially, and for a people perspective, because a real successful leader I've seen here really thinks about the humans, the data, and most importantly, the orchestration operationally behind all of that. Because at the heart of it, what you're trying to do is deliver exceptional customer experiences and for your service teams to be the best face of your brand. That was a little bit poetic, but I hope it kind of struck true.
Oh, it definitely did. It definitely did. No, it's great. I love it. And let's kind of build on that a little bit, because if you had to explain what does the ideal service leader look like? If you were to describe that person in terms of being successful with AI, in terms of the qualities, the actions that they've taken, what would that person look like?
I would say they're incredibly consultative. They have a lot of resilience, because this is a very tough change, and you face a lot of negativity, criticism, and challenge. So you need a lot of resilience to listen hard and think very deeply about satisfying all the multiple stakeholders. And I think that really deep down, after being crass about this, that service leader, when I think about what they look like, they just have balls. Because you need a lot of it to get you from kind of initial ideation to execution. It's not easy getting through the data privacy hurdles and the ROI business case hurdles. And then you're thinking about all the change management and who you need to tap into for all the communication. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So you need to carry all of those people on the bus with you to achieve this vision.
I agree, and that in many instances requires breaking down barriers and breaking glass inside the organization to have service be represented as a strategic function that's systemic to the company's success, right? So you can have balls, right? But if you're just preaching to a choir that isn't listening, right, what good is it going to do, right? So I think there's certainly an importance to have courage, but I think there's also an importance to cultivate a collaboration and a movement inside the company to embrace the importance of service. And let's face it, right? There's room to make more progress in that respect. So, all right. So we've covered a couple of things here that I think is really great for our listenership. Thanks, Tas, for sharing all these insights. Let's get into let's go back to the harnessing the knowledge, if we could. We've got time for it. Let's get into we talked about the retirement crisis and the silver tsunami, which I know all too well, but next gen and new employees, right? So AI is in many respects table stakes for next gen, right? They expect it, they're living with it day by day. Talk a little bit about that in terms of how does that influence service leaders planning today in terms of the workforce demographic, with retirement crisis happening, next gen coming in, next gen being more compatible with it in many respects versus, incompatibility. What are you hearing about the next gen and its importance to AI's success, failure, or anything in between?
Yeah, to put this in context, I was in a room with 50 service leaders, and the question was asked, who is hiring into their service team? Mm-hmm. And nearly everybody put their hand up, because at any one point in time, you're growing or hiring or replacing, and you're building either somebody desk-based or out there in the field. And it was during that realization that the penny dropped for me around how important onboarding is. And it was actually in those discussions around this that I actually uncovered that in some of the interview processes that people are getting now from the younger generation, they're actually starting to ask the question, what AI do you use? And I think when you're talking about table stakes and really about harnessing the knowledge, the future of the service professional is reliant on feeling empowered to not have a 9-month or year-long onboarding process, and to actually be able to actually execute at the level of an expert by leveraging AI, because that's how they've come up through sort of the education process and the way that they've brought up in the world. They are used to talking to Gemini or to Siri or to Alexa. That's not new for them. It's still something pretty weird for me, but we really do need to think about this as table stakes for the new generation when they come into service. They are actually wondering, what AI do I get to help me do my job?
I love it. That's really great. Let's go into our final question for today. Let's talk about, we can't host a prediction podcast without talking about some sort of bonus fun prediction moving forward. What are some of the things that you're hearing in terms of, what's next for AI, or even more broadly speaking, just service in general?
Ooh, my cheeky prediction for AI. I think people, to steal some words from someone that's smarter than me at Aquant, I think people are going to get out of the kiddie pool. And what I mean by that is people have dabbled around with freebies and pilots and kind of these little experiments. And I think it's time to get out of the kiddie pool and actually take a look at the real AI solutions that are actually executing at scale. If we think about where you started right at the top, in terms of the real challenges, the real issues, and getting way more strategic. Let's get beyond, I'm thinking about this use case, I'm going to use that technology. I'm going to think about this use case, I'm going to think about that technology. I'm going to use this technology for the contact center, this app for the field. I'm going to use this for my customer, and start thinking more broadly. So maybe not so fun, but I think people are going to get themselves out of the kiddie pool and get more strategic.
Love it. I'll give a couple for our listening audience, as not to steal the thunder of an upcoming predictions webinar I'll be hosting with my colleague Gerardo. But I think that we're going to see AI continue to be a predominant technology prioritization, and that's not a real wild prediction, right? But what I think is wild is the governance and fragmentation that still exists with respect to data privacy, data security, and the incompatibility of some geographic locations to one another. So I think we're going to see a lot more growth with respect to universal approaches to AI governance, data, and security. I think that's going to be a big push this year. Behind that, there are some cause for concern with respect to some macroeconomic things that are happening out there. Right, some of the supply chain nations, in terms of source for, sourcing, parts and components and all sorts of things. I think that that could be some form of challenge this coming year. But I'm going to make a prediction here on the fly that I think might land well with our listening audience. And that is that I think service is really making progress. And I keep on asking that question at our symposium, at our events. Are we making progress? I think that the corporate agenda is going to start recognizing service more strategically. And I think it becomes more important when you think about the cost to acquire customers, the cost to retain, the lifetime value, and how much more it costs to retain versus to acquire new. I think that that's going to circle back as a really important and critical thread this year. And so I think that bodes well for service leaders that are attempting to break that glass and overcome some of those barriers to getting services recognition. So, Tas, anything else? Any closing comments or thoughts before we close out today?
I would say, just to everybody listening, super thankful for your time. It's really by speaking to all of you that I actually have any of these insights. So for those of you who I've spoken to it before in the past and I've used one of your examples, thank you, because it all came from you guys, the listening audience. So I just leave you with that. And John, it's always a pleasure.
I agree. Thank you so much, Tas. It's always fun to be together. For those listening, thank you to Aquant. Thank you for the complimentary book. And hopefully you grab that from the chat in the comments. Very generous, and services, humanity in action right there. So thank you to Aquant. And thank you, Tas, for being on today's session. This is really great resource for our listenership. And I hope everybody takes an opportunity at the end of the year here to spend time with family and decompress and recharge the battery as we turn the calendar year here. So hopefully wishing you and your family the best amongst the season. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. If you want to revisit this episode, it's on demand. You can find it on whatever channel you subscribe to, at our website, on LinkedIn, at Aquant, all over the place. And I'd encourage you to learn more about Aquant by visiting their website. So thank you very much. Everybody have a great day. Appreciate your time.